All right, what's going on, everybody? We are back with a interview with one of my partners. I am stoked for this one. This is somebody I've been in business with for coming up on 3 years, but uniquely enough, because this hasn't happened many times in my life, but this is actually someone who I go way back with, someone I knew years and years and years before real estate. And one day he came to me to pick my brain about the workings of the real estate industry. And little did I know at that moment that he was thinking about what the next step in his life would be. And it turns out that next step was real estate. And I had the blessing of being able to help him launch his real estate career, brand new out of real estate school. He left behind, a more traditional working world to go into this industry. And out the gate, even first year in the business, he found a lot of success with it. In fact, at that point, he was the most productive real estate agent that I think I had ever seen or worked with first 12 months in the business. About 24 deals closed first 12 months in the business. And he's been very consistently helping out buyers, sellers, and gaining market share in his local market ever since, which, by the way, that's South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley area, McAllen, Texas, if you ever heard of it. That's Patrick's market. And welcome to the channel, Patrick Harris. I'm so glad to have you on, brother, man.
Tyler, I appreciate it, man. It's finally good we're able to do this. Super stoked to be on the channel and to be in front of all your viewers, and excited to share the story, and hopefully it inspires someone out there to take that next step in their real estate journey.
I appreciate you, brother. I know the audience is going to get a lot of value, which, if you've seen these before, you probably already know. If this is your first time watching one, this is something to expect every single week. I'm bringing on partners of people I'm working with directly who are doing the most. That way you can learn from that hands-on experience working in the industry and go and take something positive you learn and go and apply it in your own business and life. And if you haven't already done so already, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of these in the future. But Patrick, man, let's dive right into it. Like, what was life like before real estate? I mean, before we get to the nitty gritty, I know the people want to know how you've been closing deals, like even fresh out of the gate as a new licensed agent, because a lot of people struggle with that part. But let's talk about life before real estate, man. What was the journey like up to that point?
Great, yeah, great question. So before I got into real estate, I had just graduated with a 4-year degree in finance and started working actually in corporate accounting. And so, it was, can't complain. It was an amazing job, 8 to 5 every day, had half days on Fridays, salary position. But what I found was I was doing the same thing day in, day out, as an accountant, mostly working, either on a small team or by myself. And I started to miss that environment of working with other people. And so, after a couple of years, I just thought, I'm ready for a change. And during that time period is actually when I connected with you, and we had bought, my wife and I bought our first house, actually using you as our realtor. And so that kind of planted the seed, like, it's interesting, that side of the business. And I'd always wanted to do something for myself, like build my own business and not necessarily work from a corporate standpoint for a business. So those gears started turning. But no, it was, I can't complain. It was a great job, good pay. It just wasn't, I didn't find it fulfilling. And so there was that want, okay, I do want to make a change. It was just finding the right time when the iron was hot to strike.
That's awesome to hear, man. I think that's something relatable to a lot of people. And it kind of makes me wonder how often people have that thought, but don't really put anything new into motion with it. I think it's probably the easier path, is to not make a change and just to stay in that, what sounds like maybe a comfortable situation, but something where you kind of know in the back of your mind, like, hey, this really isn't where I feel like I need to be, where I want to be, or where I could potentially find something more fulfilling. But why real estate, man? Because there's a lot of paths in business and life, especially kind of hearing that you wanted to do more of your own thing. So, like, why did you decide to go into real estate out of any other potential option you might have had?
It's a great question. When we had gone through our home buying process, I got to kind of see behind the curtains and how everything worked, and it really kind of opened up, a lot of windows for me. And I was like, it seemed like a little bit lower barrier to entry than starting your own business. Because if you look at any other type of upstart business or new business creation, the outlay of capital that you're putting forward, we're talking, sometimes 4 or 5 figures. Where if real estate, let's say your coursework's, $1,200, $1,500, right? Possibly cheaper too if you're self motivated. And past that, your licensing and fees are probably like maybe another 500. So maybe all in, you're talking maybe 2,000 to 2,500 compared to more traditional business, which you're talking, like I said, close to 10 grand or more than that, depending on what you're trying to do. So from a cost perspective, it was a very low barrier to entry. And it also it opens up a lot of avenues, not just for traditional buying and selling, but if you have any interest in the investing side of real estate, and whether that's rental incomes, whether that fix and flips, or whatever you're trying to do in the business, it gives you a lot more pathways instead of just one, which is another aspect of real estate I really liked. And I mean, depending on your brokerage, like the brokerage we're both part of, also opens you up to a lot more unique opportunities too in the real estate industry, which to me was all like a big factor in making that choice to say, hey, this is the direction I want to go to start my own business, and to get my real estate license. And I want to touch on a point you said earlier where a lot of people in that mindset, like they're thinking about it, it's in the back of their mind. A good step I would recommend is check out your local course requirements to get your license. Like something that helped me, it's probably 2 years since we bought our house before I made the jump. Well, during that time, I had looked into courses and was doing coursework while I was working my full-time job. And depending how it goes with those courseworks and as you're working through them, that can be a good motivation to making that jump. Because I think a lot of people, like you said, it's in the back of their mind, but they're not taking any steps to get there. So I think signing up for some courses, even if it's just one or two classes, a month or one a month, can help you, give you tangible goals to get that license.
Yeah, taking the next step can be a powerful thing, like, because there always is a next step, but you're either, sitting on that information and not doing anything with it, or you're putting it into motion. Even if you don't know what the end of it looks like, at least taking the next step forward and seeing where it takes you in the process. But you kind of touched on another thing I was going to ask you about, which is, there's a lot of paths you can go once you get that license, but you specifically decided to, I guess, trust me in the process, aligning with me here at EXP Realty. So, it's clear that you saw opportunity there, but like, anything else you'd like to say about why you decided to go that direction specifically instead of, any other potential option out there?
No, yeah, for sure. One thing I'll add is, I specifically remember the day because, again, I was at work, and it was just one of those grinding days where literally you're doing the same thing over and over again. I was like, you know what? I haven't talked to Tyler anymore. And I shot Tyler a text like, hey, what are you doing for lunch? You want to meet up? And Tyler's like, yeah, let me know. So we actually went and grabbed lunch together, and I started picking his brain about it. And the idea that stood out to me in that moment was not being behind the desk for 9 hours a day. You're actually getting out there, working with people on the ground. You're always doing something new, and to me that was the match, the flame that started the fire, I think. And the motivation, like, hey, I'm not going to be stuck behind a desk. I'm going to get to be out there working with people in a new environment every day. And so that kind of started the ball rolling, and then from there, the rest is history.
That's awesome, man, dude. I remember exactly that meeting, man. It was at Bill Miller's.
Yes,
If you're in
sir.
Texas, you probably know about that. But yeah, dude, I remember, and I don't know that I like, to me, if like, I don't think I realized that like that was going to be your path forward after that point. And I mean, for me, up to that point, it was kind of rare. I'm trying to even think of another scenario where I've had a conversation with someone like that up to that point. I mean, now, like, I have these conversations all the time because it's a big part of what I do. But at that point, I was, primarily active, helping clients, and that was my bread and butter. Now, I help people build careers in a bigger way. But that was something I'm like, man, what is Patrick curious about here? This is a little different, but it worked out positively. But man, 3 years, coming up on 3 years in the mix, and you've been
It's crazy.
consistent with what it is you've done over that course of time, always seemingly always having multiple clients you're working with, closings on the schedule. So you've built up a consistency, a level of it that I think a lot of people would like to have, and who are in the industry and still trying to get to that point. But what I wanted to ask, at least kind of as the next question here is, what have you found in your experience, running your business here at eXp Realty? What have you found to be most beneficial about that specifically, as far as what you have access to here that, maybe it wouldn't look the same elsewhere? Like, what would you say on that?
That's a great question. I think one of the unique things about EXP compared to your more traditional brokerage that I found was really successful was having so much support at your fingertips. So it didn't matter whether you were driving between a showing for a client, you're going from one house to another, or you're on a vacation, or you're at home and you need a quick question from a broker, or you need some type of support, whether it's an accounting thing. It was the fact that you could literally pick up your phone and in 5 minutes you had your answer. And to me, that was such a big help. And as you know, Tyler, when seconds count, especially whether it's a transaction or a negotiation, like sometimes you need those answers quick. And where a more traditional brokerage, you'd either have to get a hold of your broker on the phone or drive into the office and schedule an appointment. Where with EXP, we don't have just one broker. We have, 6 on duty every day and maybe even more, just depending on how busy it is. So, you're not going to wait more than 5 minutes for some type of answer, especially when those minutes count. And so being in that environment, I think was the biggest aspect for me about being with EXP. And that's not even to get into our other platforms we have, because we have support like KV Core, which is a CRM, which if you're familiar with that, you'll know that name, or even Workplace, which is basically a Facebook platform, but for business, which is a huge way to connect with now over 90,000 EXP agents worldwide, which is such a powerful tool. And again, like if you have a question and say it's not a broker question or accounting question, like you can go to Workplace and ask your fellow agents, like, hey, have you guys had this experience before? Or, depending on what it is, you have so much support at your fingertips, and the speed at which you get answers, I think, is unrivaled. And so I found, especially as I was learning as a new agent, that was extremely helpful.
That's great to hear, man. And I think a lot of people, as they're diving into this industry, like that's one of the biggest things on their mind is like, how am I really going to get the help and support I need? And I know you started at EXP. I can speak from having started at another company, because I didn't know EXP existed when I got my license. But I know what it looks like literally at the largest, most productive office in a major market area. And I've talked with others that start in a similar kind of scenario. And for me, it's kind of crazy to think back, but I didn't have that. Like, I didn't have a scenario where I could go and reach out to the broker team and have a answer in 5 minutes ever, let alone every single time. Like, so what you just described is literally the exact opposite of what I had. But it wasn't because I was at a bad company. I was at a great company. They were closing more real estate than anyone, but the structure behind it was completely different than what we have to tap into here today. And so for me, it was kind of crazy too, because like I didn't have a way to get that help. Like I had to figure it out on my own. Can you imagine that? But it's kind of
It's
crazy. It's a
wild.
different scenario. But what would you say? Like, for a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people get started in this industry, and everyone's journey, everyone has a story they're writing in the process. But for you, what would you say has been the most difficult thing you've had to overcome since deciding to get started in real estate?
I think it's a good question, and I think the answer is probably similar to a lot of other new agents who are transitioning or have transitioned from a more structured work environment, like an 8 to 5 work environment, to an environment where you're running your own business. And the biggest thing for me was learning that discipline that comes with running your own business, because you're no longer in an environment where your supervisor or your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need X, Y, and Z done by 5 o'clock. You're in an environment now where no one's telling you to do anything, but you have to you have to be disciplined, teach yourself that discipline, say, hey, I have these goals. how do I accomplish them? And what we call is reverse engineering. You take your goals, let's say for the year, and you break them down into smaller and smaller pieces till you have tangible targets that you're working every day. So just a quick example, like, okay, if I want to close 30 deals this year, how many phone calls do I need to make to schedule appointments to get those 30 deals closed? So that, let's say that's okay, I need to make 50 calls a week. Okay, so how many calls a day is that? So you're taking 50 divided by 7, and you're making that amount of calls every day to achieve it. So it's being disciplined enough to say, okay, hey, from 8 in the morning to noon, I'm making phone calls. And building that discipline, that muscle memory, is probably the hardest for me, because you have to set your own structure. No one's going to do that for you. And so I think for me, that was the hardest obstacle. But once I kind of learned it, once I got that muscle memory, it made things a lot easier. And I, like I said, I don't think that's unique to me. I think a lot of new agents or agents that come from a more traditional workplace struggle with that as well. And what I've seen as not just an agent, but as a mentor to new agents, a certified mentor of EXP, is that the agents that struggle or don't get a lot of business tend to be ones that don't have a lot of self-discipline, who don't put those structures in place. And so that the biggest advice I can give is really start on working that discipline early, because that's gonna do wonders for your business as you grow.
Yeah, having that self discipline, it's a lot different than what a lot of people who, are used to coming from a more traditional working environment. So, yeah, very, very valuable insight on that. And side note, I mean, you mentioned this, you're a certified mentor, so you're actually someone now who helps newly licensed agents in your local market area kind of find their path and truly have that additional helping hand they need to move forward with confidence as they're working with their first few clients. So I'll just throw this out there. If there happens to be anyone watching this getting into the business who's in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, who potentially could benefit from mentorship getting into the business, Patrick just might be your guy. He's a
Yeah, let me
phenomenal.
know. And yeah, I think that's that one thing too. When people are thinking about starting the industry, they're nervous about how they get started. The amazing thing about EXP is they assign you a certified mentor, and it's not just someone who has, let's say one transaction under their belt. The mentors have done quite a bit of business and know the ins and outs, and are going to help you navigate your first three transactions in the industry. So it really gives you that hands-on support that you might not get otherwise. And on top of that, there's tons of other resources out there. There's coaching, there's all kinds of things you can utilize to help develop your business. So that's the biggest thing. You're not alone. Just remember that you got a ton of support behind you. It's just accessing it and asking for help, and you'll have that support behind you.
That's right. And yeah, so Patrick's a mentor in his local area, and like no matter where you're watching this from, if that's something you can benefit from, we have the ability to facilitate that in any market area. So know that as well. So all you got to do is connect if you're wondering how you can get paired up with the right mentor and truly have that guidance. Because I'll tell you, it's crazy, but you won't have that in any scenario out there. You really have to be in a at a place that has a structure for it, and that it makes it a key element of what they do, which that's exactly what happens where we operate our real estate business. So if we can help facilitate that for you, reach out. You'll find a way to do that in the description here. But next question, Patrick, man. And this one, I always get excited when I get to hear the answers to this. But like, how has the success you found in real estate thus far? How has that impacted your life?
I mean, it's been pretty amazing. Obviously there comes a lot, from a monetary standpoint, as you do well in the industry. It definitely adds value. But for me, the biggest thing that this industry has given me is freedom, not just financial freedom, which I think, obviously there's a lot of avenues to obtain financial freedom, but having the freedom as a business owner to build your own schedule and to give yourself time, whether that's time to travel, more time to spend with family, those things have been incredibly valuable. We live in such a fast-paced society, which sometimes it's hard to say, hey, I want to take some time to focus on what's important. And being in this industry, and as you obtain certain levels of success in the industry, it does give you the ability to say, hey, I can take a week to spend with the family here, or I can spend a week to travel to, experience new things. And I think that's one aspect that is pretty amazing about this industry. Now, again, any business owner, you might have that, but I think it is definitely unique to EXP. And one aspect I'm sure we'll talk about it is as you build your team too. If you decide to build your team with EXP, you have that support as well, which gives you a little bit more freedom too, because it's not just you. Now you have a support network to rely on as well. And so I think that's one aspect to me that I've found that success in real estate has made a huge difference in my life is that freedom. And I've had to sum it to one word to be freedom.
So I'm taking from that you're probably experiencing a different kind of freedom than you did in your prior working experience to getting into real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about most workplaces, let's say you start out with 2 weeks vacation time. It's not something you say, hey, I'm going to take next week off because we have a big family event. It goes through an approval process. Let's say your manager says, hey, you know what, we're going to be short staffed. I can't let you have that time off. The nice thing about, in real estate, your own business, you say, hey, next week's important to me. I know that let's say I don't have any client obligations. I can take that week off to focus on family or whatever the situation is. And to me, that aspect is insanely valuable. Which I like, again, I don't think you get that at a traditional workplace, which to me is one of the things I've found that is most important.
I'm glad to hear that, man. That's awesome. So you found that fulfillment you were looking for and hoping for getting into this industry. So, man, thinking back to closer to that point in time, before you had any clients, before you had any income you had generated from real estate, if you think back on it, what would you say was the biggest breakthrough you had going from, zero business, $0 produced in real estate to the first one and ultimately where you're at today? What would you say the biggest breakthrough was?
It's a good question. I think it comes down, if I think about it, because when I started, we were just getting into the end of the year, so we were approaching December, and the very first deal I got under contract was for a small lot, and the deal ended up falling through for December, and so feeling a little demoralized going into the new year. At this point, I'm 2 months without a deal closed, and again, this is full jump from a full-time career into real estate. So there's no paycheck coming every 2 weeks. So you feel that pressure. And coming into February, I end up closing my first deal, which was 4 months after getting licensed. So nothing for 4 months. And then finally closing that first deal. And, my client who I still see, at least once a month now, we play around the golf together. He was so ecstatic about the closing and so happy with the process. And that instilled so much confidence in me going forward, which just allowed me, I think, to be more aggressive in my business. And that confidence, I think, would be the key thing was knowing, because I knew I could do it. But once you actually get that first transaction under your belt, you realize, you know what, it's not as hard as I made it out to be in my head. And I have the ability to accomplish this. And so if I can do this, I can do 20 more. And so I think that's really what started the get the boulder rolling and kicked off the rest of the year was getting that first transaction to belt and building that confidence to really scale the business.
That yeah, that's awesome. Like, and you've got to push through to get to that point a lot of times. And
Yeah,
yeah, I would totally agree that you have a different level of confidence once you've been through the process. You do it one time, there's no way that you're gonna like come off of that not thinking you can do it again. I mean, you already did it. You have proof now that you've done it.
a
Now we can
hundred
build
percent.
upon it.
You you
So that
you not only are you helping someone, with their goals for home ownership, but you also get to pick up that first check, and that validates all the work you've put in. And sometimes that's not just, in my case, the 4 months it took to close that first deal, but that's you know the 6 months of getting licensing and going through all that process, all of that coming to a culmination of, hey, this is possible. I have it right here in my hands. This first commission check shows that I can make a career out of this. And I think it's a very rewarding point in your real estate journey is closing that first transaction. But to me, that confidence really made a difference and showed like, hey, this goal is absolutely obtainable.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you just got to keep going, y'all, until you get to that point if you haven't already done so. It's inevitable if you stick with it long enough and don't quit. As long as you keep having conversations with people, sooner or later you're going to find someone you can help buy or sell a house. It's impossible that you don't. The only way you don't is if you give up. And Man, if you could go back day one, first day in the business, knowing everything you've learned in the process up to this point, and give yourself just one thing, one piece of advice, and that's it, what would it be?
If I could go back and tell myself one thing, I think it would be, jump on every opportunity possible, because I know I had this, and I've seen it in mentees I work with, and I've talked to other agents. And I think maybe it's also a generational thing, but it's what's called imposter syndrome. You get, your brand new license, and you're like, man, like, I don't feel like I know enough, or I'm ready for this. Like, I don't even know where to start. It's say, hey, push all of that aside and just jump into it. Start making phone calls, start talking to people, start door knocking. The biggest thing you can go into it is with confidence, and don't let those voices stop you, because at the end of the day, if you're pushing through, the success will follow 100%. It's just don't put yourself off to don't say, hey, I got to wait on this to get finished, or I got to wait on that to get completed. Jump into it, because as you're onboarding to your MLS, as you're onboarding to your brokerage, you can always come up with excuses to say, hey, I'm going to start this next week, or hey, I'm going to start this next month. And I think a lot of new agents fall into that trap. And so, and I know I did the same thing too. I'm like, oh, I'm going to wait till I get onboarded, I wait all this. But if my advice going back to day one would be, hey, start calling day one. There's nothing stopping you from scheduling appointments. There's nothing stopping you from having conversations, because you need to start filling that pipeline. And so if I could go back, that would be the advice. Don't wait on all those formalities to get started. Like, day one, start reaching out. I think that would be the biggest advice I could give, especially for agents who are hungry.
That's a great nugget. 100% agree. And kind of looking forward now, man. What would you say that you look forward to accomplishing the most in the time ahead?
So it's a lot of different pathways in front, but I think the biggest thing for me is we've slowly been growing our team locally, and I'd like to see that expand even more. We brought in new agents to the team, and I'd like that to continue to grow. I've also, obviously had a decent amount of success in my business, but it's obviously never enough, and I want it to keep growing. So I have certain targets for 2024 coming around that I want to hit, both on the transaction side and also on the team building side. And then from an investing standpoint too, I'd like to get get a property on the books as a rental, and so that's something to start thinking about as well. So these are all goals for 2024, and to anybody who's watching this, as 2023 comes to an end, it's the perfect time to start, goal setting and start thinking about, okay, what are my goals for the new year? So I definitely recommend start brainstorming now, because we have less than 2 months to the end of
Yeah.
2023. So it's a great time to start prepping. But no, that the goals next year, just going forward, is to grow the team, to grow the business itself, and to help others along the way too. That's one of the blessings about being part of our brokerage, is it's not just, ourselves growing, but it's getting to see other people and helping with their growth as well. So excited for the new year for sure.
And that's exciting, man, to hear that, because I'm thinking that probably in a lot of other scenarios, the more corporate kind of structure you came from, and probably a lot of others are accustomed to, there probably isn't the same kind of opportunity going into a new year to like just decide on what goals you want to hit, and to really have a corresponding opportunity to that comes with that. Because like when we're talking like house sales, for instance, if you have a goal to increase your production, you will get rewarded in direct proportion to that
Yep.
production. It's not like you're fighting for a tiny percent pay raise, if that, or trying to
Yeah.
get to a point where that's the case. Like, we're not just talking pay raises here, we're talking about impacting more people, we're talking about building something of value. And so it's got to be exciting, man, just to know that you can like decide what those milestones are, and then know that, hey, that's something you can work towards and ultimately have the reward that comes with it.
100%. Knowing that, hey, there's no ceiling. There's no, hey, 3% raise this year. If you want to increase your income or increase whatever your goals are, you have the opportunity directly to do that. And that's one of the amazing things about our industry. There's no caps. So as long as you're willing to put the work in and the effort and take the steps that's required, you'll 100% hit those goals. It's not about if, it's about when. And so I think that's a really powerful part about this business, and what keeps it exciting too.
100%, man. So, um, for someone who wants to put themselves in the best possible position in real estate to create lasting success working in this industry, what's one thing that you'd leave them with that maybe you haven't already mentioned?
I think the biggest thing I would recommend is surround yourself with like-minded people. I think that is the number one way to grow because everyone has the highs and lows. No matter what you're doing, whether you're working in a corporate environment or you're working in the industry, like you're gonna have those times when it's tough. And surrounding yourself with those people who are motivated, who have similar goals, similar mindset, those are the people you're gonna need to rely on during those times. And then when you're at those peaks, when you're reaching those success, those are the people you share that success with as well. And so that is the biggest thing. Like, and the great thing about our industry is you're never alone. We have so many people out there, big support networks that are going to be there to help you, especially with our brokerage, with the people we're surrounded with. Like, I think it's a little unique, but um, that is the one thing I would leave you with is have the right people around you. Make sure you have that support network because that will be the ultimate thing that transitions to success. Don't reinvent the wheel. You have tons of people who can help you with it already. So utilize it, take advantage of it, build those connections because that's going to make the biggest difference in the long run.
Man, excellent point to end it on. 100% am with you on that. That's made the biggest impact for me personally in my business is, being in the right environment and really finding that along the way. And, I would say that's the biggest thing. If you want to create massive change in your life, the best possible way to do that is to put yourself in the right environment. Seldom do we find ourselves in the right environment by default. Usually it takes us seeking out that environment and find and intentionally putting ourselves within it. We should be surrounded with people that are further along the journey than we are. We shouldn't have an environment full of people who like we're the biggest thinker and mover in the room. If that's the case, we're in the wrong room. We need to find other people that are on this track and not going to be anchors, but instead will be propellers to help us get to where it is we want to go in the process. So great stuff, my man. Man, you shared a lot of value here. If anyone wants to connect with you and kind of maybe even follow along on your journey, like, is there a place that would be best for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram at HS Estates or my website, hsestates.com. Either one, you can reach out, follow. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to help. And like I said, we're one big team here. So as you're going through that journey, if you just need some advice or you're stuck on something, let me know. I'm more than happy to help. And uh, like I said, HS Estates, let me, reach out, follow, whatever I can do to help.
Awesome. And yeah, if you're watching this, if you resonated with Patrick's story at all, or if you feel like he's someone who, might be someone you'd like to connect more with, I'm happy to facilitate that connection for you as well. But you know where to follow Patrick. But I know Patrick's someone who wants to help others grow and build in this business. If it's in his local market area, good. But, we're very blessed too to have a structure in which, we can really equally help people regardless of where on the map they're located. I mean, on a local level, sometimes there's more of an opportunity to actually like work business that's being generated by those local efforts. But with the right structure, it's like we can help people all across the map. And that's why if you've been watching these on this channel, you probably notice people are all across the map that I'm talking to. How is it that I've got partners all across the map? And, there's, like I said, there's a structure with that to where I know Patrick wants to help. So if you resonate with anything he shared, connect with me and make sure you mention Patrick. Let me know that you saw his interview and that you feel like you really relate to him and his story. And if there's anything we can bring to the table to help you, we're definitely going to do it. But Patrick, brother, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to make this happen. I know it's going to make a difference for at least one person watching, hopefully a lot more than that. But man, I'm just excited to be on this journey with you, brother, and it's a real blessing.
I appreciate it, Tyler. Thank you so much for having me on, and I hope our conversation helps some people getting started in the industry. And like you said, if anything I can do to help, let me know. But it's great being part of this, and I know you do a lot for the new agents out there. So I appreciate everything you do for our industry, man.
100%. And to everyone watching, if you haven't already hit that button, subscribe. You don't want to miss what I've got coming up next week. So hit that button and support the channel, support the video. It's going to help us to reach more people if you do that. So we appreciate you. All that being said, thank you for watching, and we will see you next week. Peace.